So we start here in 2017. The purpose of looking at pass optimal and GPP winning lineups is to try to figure out, is there a pattern when it comes to building lineups? How comfortable should you be playing a 10K golfer or a 6K golfer or 3 7Ks? That's what we figure out in the GPP winning lineups as well as the optimal lineups while analyzing this. So in 2017, your optimal lineup left $2,000 on the table. Hard to do that. Don't do it. It just finding the right lineup that way is not realistic. But just to show you what the optimal lineup was, you actually use a $10,000 Hideki Matsuyama. And then we basically, we went to an $8,900 Justin Thomas, $7,500 Louis Oosthuizen, $7,300 Patrick Reed, $7,000 Kevin Kisner, and then a $6,800 Francesco Molinari. That together adds up to be $48,000. That's impossible. So I created a more realistic lineup to get you guys comfortable with, building some of these lineups. So I have basically everything here in blue. You got Ricky Fowler at 10-7 instead of Hideki Matsuyama. We have Justin Thomas, Matt Kuchar, both in the 8K range, high 8K range. One's 88, one's 89. 2 7s and a 6. So that's a 10, 2 8s, 2 7s, and a 6. And if you've followed me long enough, or if it's the first time, I usually try to encourage you to start out building your lineups with a 10K golfer, a 9K golfer, an 8K golfer, 2 7K golfers, and 1 6K. Or, quite simply, I just say, start with a 10-9-8, 7-7-6. That's how I usually phrase it. This one starts, or your more realistic lineup has a 10, skips the 9, and it has 8-8, 7-7-6. So it's the exact same thing, but we're swapping out a 9 for an 8. And usually I will say you make up to 2 substitutions. So we're moving a 9 down to an 8. That's 1 substitution. That's the only substitution. But if you were to imagine there were 3 7s instead of having a 6 in there, then we swap one of the 6s up to a 7. Now we have 2 substitutions. So just want to reiterate that, or just to iterate it, so you understand that when I go through and talk about the next couple optimal lineups and GPP win lineups. In 2018, I apologize, I didn't record the GPP win lineup in 2017 or 2018, but I do have the optimal, and it left only $100 on the table. You started out with no 10K golfer, mind you, but we have 3 9K golfers. 3 of them. 3 9Ks, 2 7s, and a 6. Remember when I said, you can do 2 substitutions? So we go from a 10K golfer down to a 9K golfer and Brooks. So that's 1 substitution. We have our other 9K golfer in Tiger Woods. So, basically we have our 10-9, but we swapped a 10 down to a 9. But instead of dropping to an 8, we get another 9. So now we made our 2 substitutions, but guess what? The rest of it goes 7, 7, 6. So you get your 2 substitutions. So that is 3 9s, 2 7s, and a 6. That's crazy. Going to 2019, we do have a GPP wing lineup here, and an optimal and a realistic optimal. So your optimal lineup left $2,100 on the table. Don't do that. Just, again, I'm going to keep saying that. Don't do that. It's not a good practice. But that optimal, leaving a lot of money on the table, still starts with a 10K golfer. So that's Brooks Koepka at $10,400. Then we go to an $8,600 Jordan Spieth, $8,200 Patrick Cantlay, $7,000 Sung Kang, and 2 6K golfers in Matt Wallace and Luke List. So just to kind of look at this one, basically what we're doing is we're subbing down a 9 to an 8 because we have 2 8s, and we're subbing a 7 down to a 6 because we have 2 6s and only 1 7. So again, it still follows a 10 9 8 7 7 6 and makes two substitutions. Your GPP winning lineup are the golfers here in blue. So they actually started with 2 10K golfers. I believe we nicknamed these guys the Bash Brothers at this moment in time. So you had Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, $11,100 and $10,400. Then you went down to an Adam Scott at $8,100, a Thomas Peters at $7,000, and then we had two 6K golfers in Matt Wallace and Eric Van Rooyen. Those guys were both $6,700. That's a very stars and scrubs approach. Obviously, it worked out. The guy won the $4 GPP, scored 483 points. The optimal, I don't have the optimal calculated. So anyways, your realistic, like a more realistic optimal, is grabbing all the golfers, usually at the top, trying to figure that out, and not leave a lot of money on the table. So I started with Brooks Koepka at 10,400, the two 8K golfers in Spieth and Cantlay, grabbing another 8K golfer, Matt Kuchar, a 7, and then a 6. So if you're following along again and you're like, well, hold on, what are the two substitutions there? We start with our 10, we sub a 9 down to an 8, and then we sub a 7 back up to an 8. So basically we go 10, sub a 9 down to an 8, then we take our 8, then we sub a 7 back up to an 8, and then we just go 7, 6. So those are two substitutions. And that creates a more realistic optimal, and that leaves $200 on the table. All 6 of our golfers are inside the top 8. In 2020, the optimal lineup left $1,700 on the table. Impossible. Just very difficult to do. I always try to discourage people from trying to leave a lot of money on the table. It's too difficult. Don't do it. But your optimal started with, I'm trying to find it. Let me calculate this really quick. Okay, I found it. We're starting with a $9,000 Dustin Johnson, an $8,600 Colin Morikawa, an $8,400 Jason Day, two 7K golfers and Paul Casey and Sky Scheffler. We'll make it 3 with Matt Wolff. Hard to try to navigate through that, but we started with a 9. We didn't have a 10K golfer with us. So a 9, and then it was two 8K golfers. Is that correct? Yep. Jason Day and Colin Morikawa, and then 3 7K golfers. So essentially, we're technically subbing a 10 down to an 8, and then we are subbing a 6 up to a 7. That's how I would look at that when it comes to your two substitutions. Although that kind of is cheating, because I usually only go one salary down for a substitution, so 10 to a 9. But we don't have a 10K golfer that was in the optimal. You can almost call it 3 substitutions. Up to you. But you're making, you still want to make 2 substitutions. Your GPP winning lineup that year had 5 golfers inside the top 4. That's insane. Now that's going to get it done. But they had Bryson at 10-3, Dustin at 9,000, Colin Morikawa at 8,600, Scheffler and Finau in the 7K range, and then they had Ryan Palmer down in the 6K range. So if you were following along with that, that was a 10-9-8, 7-7-6. They got it done. Using Ryan Palmer, who finished 43rd, but still scored 76 points down here. So that's something that can happen, especially with someone as volatile as Ryan Palmer. It looks like I have a realistic optimal that I didn't even put over on the side here, but it starts with Bryson. Then you got your 9, your 8, your 2 7s, and the 6 that's up here, and you're leaving $200 on the table. So that follows the 10-9-8, 7-7-6. Let's see how much it actually scores. It scores 608 points. Your GPP winning lineup that year scored 584.5. So obviously the realistic optimal would have beaten that, and the optimal scored 610. So that's actually pretty darn close to the optimal lineup. Like what, 2 points behind? Yeah, 2 points behind. So this scored 608. The optimal scored 610. So a little bit easier doing the 10-9-8, 7-7-6 here, or the other one is, you know, subbing a 10 down to an 8 and then subbing a 6 up to a 7. That's probably pretty difficult to do. In 2021, your optimal left even more money on the table. Again, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to do the realistic optimal, which if the optimal tends to, or doesn't leave a lot of money on the table, we have a really good shot actually hitting the optimal. But we want to be realistic with our approach. We can't really shoot for the stars without really aiming at something. So your optimal, leaving that much on the table. Remember, this is Kiawah Island. Phil Mickelson won at $6,700. Brooks Koepka was second, $9,500. Louis at $8,000. We had Paul Casey at $77, Padraig Harrington at $63, and Justin Rose at $8,100. Pretty hard to do. The Millie Maker winning lineup, your GPP winning lineup that year, had Phil, Brooks, and Louis. Also had Justin Rose, so 4 of the optimal lineup golfers, but then had Hideki Matsuyama and Sungjae Im. Just if you're trying to figure out how that's created, that's using 2 9K golfers, 2 8K golfers, make that 3 8K golfers, and a 6. So a pretty balanced build, but jumping or adding Phil Mickelson to it. Seems like this was probably a lineup built around Phil Mickelson, or they just like those 5 golfers, like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just put Phil in it. Because the other names are pretty strong. So that was your Millie Maker. Now your realistic lineup, your realistic optimal, scored 520.5 points. Millie Maker scored 501, so it beats it by 19. The optimal scored 529, so it's really only it's only 9 points behind it. You would have started out with Brooks Koepka at 9, or actually you would start out with Colin Morikawa at $9,800, then go to Brooks at 95, Louis at 8, Rosie at 8, a 7, and a 6. So you still have your 2 substitutions, right? You're going a 10K down to a 9. We'll just say that's Colin Morikawa. He can pretend to be our 10K substitute. That's probably a good way to put it. He's our 10K substitute. We go to a 9K. We also have our 8K, but then we have our 7K substitute and Louis Oosthuizen at 8K. So those are your 2 substitutions because we can then follow it up with a 7 and a 6. So again, that was 9 points behind the optimal, but still 20 points above the Millie Maker. And it's really following the 10-9-8-7-7-6 approach by making a couple substitutions. Last year, 2022, your optimal left $1,600 on the table. So you're seeing a huge trend with leaving money on the table. Again, I don't encourage leaving money on the table. Not that much, at least. $500 or less is what you want to leave on the table, or $600 or less. If you use $49,400 of your salary, you're in a good spot, but you want to do more than that. Or I shouldn't say you want to do more than that, but that would be your lowest point, the lowest amount of money you would spend. Your optimal that year, though, all 6 of your guys here at the top. So that's Justin Thomas, Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, Tommy Fleetwood. So 10, 8, 7, 7, and then 2 6K golfers. And that left $1,600 on the table. It scored 519 points. Your GPP winning lineup scored 502. So there was only a 17-point difference there. It used up all the money that DraftKings allows you, and it uses the top 5 guys. So Justin Thomas, Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, Mito Pereira, and Tommy Fleetwood. But it also has Joaquin Niemann down here at $8,500. So there's no 9K golfer there, but it goes 10, 8, 8, 7, 7, 6. It's just it'll always be a common trend in a lot of lineups that take down a GPP or an optimal lineup, having at least one 6K golfer in it and kind of following the 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6 model, that approach. Your realistic optimal lineup scored 515 points. Optimal was 519. GPP was 502. So we still beat the GPP by following this realistic. Again, don't want to leave more than $600 on the table. We're leaving exactly $600 on the table. And it's these top guys that you see. $10,000 Justin Thomas, $8,900. Then we have 3 7Ks and a 6K. So again, you're still following the 10-9-8-7-7-6 approach. We don't have a 9K golfer. So really, I guess that's your 2 substitutions, or just 1, depending on how you look at it. We're subbing a 9 down to a 7. So it's either you think we're subbing a 9 to an 8 and then an 8 to a 7. You certainly could do it that way. Or it's just one big leap, a 9 down to a 7. But it still follows, still works. So very interesting dynamics when it comes to choosing your golfers. Now, one thing I've noticed when it comes to me building my lineups is I tend to include the whole 6K pool, or at least a pretty large amount of golfers in the 6K pool. Let's look at some of these names. Mito Pereira, he was a favorite. One of the like long shot favorites, I should say, heading into this event. So at $6,700, that was a pretty good price. And I guess let's see what his ownership was in 2022. 10% owned. For a 6K golfer, that's pretty high. Whereas like Chris Kirk was another 6K golfer, he was only 2% owned. But when it comes to name value, those are good golfers. Like if we put them at the Honda Classic, they're probably in the 8K, maybe 7, like high 7, mid 8K range. And then you can also add Brendan Steele into that mix too, who, if you put it the Honda Classic, would be in the 8K range if he wasn't on the Live Tour now. So a lot of good names there with the 6K range. If we look at previous years with 6K golfers, you know, like Patty Harrington came out of nowhere, right? Same with Phil Mickelson, but guess what? They're previous major winners. That's how you say it. They're major winners. They've already won a major before. So those are good names. One surprise here would be Harry Higgs at $6,400. That came out of nowhere. Like his recent form was terrible. So keep that in mind. You could have a 6K golfer like that show up. Same goes with like Kevin Streelman. I'm not saying like his recent form was terrible. He's a savvy veteran. He can get it done. But just noting some of the 6K golfers there. In 2020, you know, our first 6K golfer is Joel Dahmen. Now, Joel Dahmen had a pretty good stretch of golf leading up into the PGA Championship, where he had a couple top 20 places, finishing places. That's pretty good, you know, especially a golfer who's in the 6K range. You had Siwoo Kim, who had already won on tour at that time in the 6K range. He was 13th place, so we don't really consider that or don't really count that. But you had two pretty, I wouldn't say prominent, names in the 6K range there, but, decent winners on the PGA Tour. Let's put it that way. They were winners on the PGA Tour. Maybe not Dahmen at that time in 2020. Probably not. Can't remember where his first win came from. I think it was Corrales, but I don't remember which year. Here's one of those odd ones. Would be Matt Wallace. Same kind of goes with like Luke List in 2019. So those are kind of two. I mean, Matt Wallace would have definitely been an odd one. We don't have really any good lead-up form. Had finished 19th at the PGA Championship the year before, so maybe that's something to look at. When it comes to our 6K golfers. I don't know if that's a trend that we can follow. It doesn't look like in 2020 we can do that. Or in 2021. So it looks like that's just unique to 2019. Yeah, so there's interesting name. Now, Luke List, we all know, is a ball striking darling. Can't putt, but super good with his driver, super good with his irons. So there's something to that when it comes to Luke List's name that you see up there. And then I guess Eric Van Rooyen and Ches Reavie are kind of some odd names, but they're also winners on tour now as well. Now, that's more of a forecasted thing because Eric Van Rooyen had not won on tour in 2019. He ended up winning the Barracuda. Is that or the Barbasol? One of the two. Same goes with Ches Reavie. But he had won on tour prior to that. So maybe that's the one thing we need to look when it comes to 6K ranges, is trying to find previous tour winners. And I guess if we can forecast a tour win for one of these guys, maybe that's a good thing, but that's probably going to be too difficult to do. Yeah, Stuart Sink was a winner. I mean, I guess he has a second place finish, being a $6,700 golfer there. An older guy, but not super old in 2018. What did he win in 2021 or 2022? 2 or 3 times. So, yeah, prominent guy there with Stuart Sink. And then who else do we have? Ches Reavie, Brendan Stone. So some odd names here as well. But yeah, if you're going to choose a 6K golfer, it seems like we want a prominent guy. Someone who has won on tour before, or I guess that has the pedigree to have won on tour, like Francesco Molinari has won on tour before. I I don't know if he won the Open Championship at that before this time. Maybe he did. Can't remember what year that was. Was that 2019, 2018? But I know he had won on tour prior to this event in 2017. Graham Dillette, that's kind of a surprise, although we knew he was a good ball striker as well. Jordan L. Smith was a good Brit, an Englishman, I should say. That's kind of an odd one. So Matt Wallace and Jordan L. Smith, they kind of meet that oddball criterion, both come from England. So maybe we need an English golfer in the 6K range. I don't know. That's probably looking too far into it, but that's kind of what I think about when it comes to the 6K ranges. We need to figure out some factors that go into it outside of it just being random choice. Because with a major championship like the PGA Championship, some of these just, it's not random. You can figure out who those golfers are. So I guess in 2023, who are 6K golfers that we can look that have won on tour before? Aaron Wise has won on tour before. Burmester has not. Adam Hadwin has won on tour before. So too has Tom Hoagie. So too has Matt Kuchar. Brian Harmon has won on tour before. So has Mackenzie Hughes. Francesco Molinari. Again, we're looking on the PGA Tour, not, like worldwide, where you could lump in like Thomas Peters, Jordan Smith, Adrian Meronk, those guys. We're looking at winners. Sepp Straka has won on tour. So too has Danny Willett, your Masters champion. There's Patty Harrington once again, if you want to go there. KH Lee, he's won on tour before as well. Sadly, Patrick Rogers has not. I think Scott Stallings has. I'd have to double check that one, but I think he has. Brendan Steele, your live tour golfer, he has won on the PGA Tour before. Adam Svensson won Fall Swing. He has won on tour as well. So too has Joel Damon. We can count Nick Hardy's win at the Zurich Classic. That can count. Why not? Kevin Kisner down here at $6,500. Nick Taylor, $6,500. Zach Johnson. These are all people who have won on tour. I think Trey Mullinax has won on tour. I think. I am also not sure about Andrew Putnam. I can't remember. I don't think so. But JT Poston down here at $6,300 has won on tour before. So too has Martin Keimer. He's a major champion. So, hey, we've talked about major champions winning. Walker is a major champion. He's won the PGA Championship. Let's see what other 6K golf. We probably just keep the other 6K golfers away. Although Y.E. Yang has won a PGA Championship, we're going to stay away from him because I believe he's now on the Champions Tour, and we probably just don't want to play Champions golfers unless their names are Padraig Harrington and Phil Mickelson. I think we'll probably just leave it there, but we've highlighted a few names that have won on tour, and Luke Donald has won on tour. Forgot about that. Anyone else that you can find that has won on the PGA Tour, those are golfers that are probably worth playing or taking shots at. So there's a few of them here. Let's count them out. Starts with Wise up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to Molinari. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 to Hardy. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and we're not going to include Y.E. Yang. So 24. Now, it is my belief you don't play a 6K golfer more than 4% of the time. Well, we have nearly 25 golfers. You built 100 lineups, there's your 4%. Because if we play them all 4 times, perfect. We have 100 lineups built with at least one of these 6K golfers. You're going to have a 4% chance to, have the right 6K golfer in the that will be in the optimal lineup. But yeah, I don't know if you want to go down that deep of the rabbit hole, but that's kind of what I do when it comes to building lineups. So I just wanted to go through that. That's a little different than what I typically do with Pass Optimal and GPP winning lineups. Usually I like to focus on the 10 and the 10, the 9, the 8K range and build lineups that way. Just so you know, if you wanted to build one combination of each 10 and 9K golfer, you would have to build 45 lineups to do that. Because there are 5 10K golfers and there are 9 9K golfers. I'm sorry, there are 8. No, there are 9 9K golfers. So it's basically 9 times 5, 45. Now, if you wanted to pair up each 10 with each 9 as well as each 8, you'd have to build, I think it was like 545 lineups, something like that. It's ridiculous. Or maybe it's 345. I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's 345. Good luck. And then you have at least probably a good start to an optimal lineup. Like you have a good chance to have 3 of the top golfers be in the optimal, but you have to get the other 3 golfers correct. So that's probably impossible. Don't do that. But anyways, that's going to wrap up Pass Optimal and GPP winning lineups.